This is World Unity Week happening on the environmental stage. And tonight I get to hand the stage over to Frances Littman and her crew from Creatively United. Tell us what's happening, Frances. You got a bunch of young faces here. Looks like we're going to have the future. Tell us what's going on.
That's for sure. Hello and welcome everybody to World Unity Week. And I'm Frances Littman, the founder of the Creatively United for the Planet nonprofit society, where we offer a creative solutions for a new world community sharing hub. So you can see that at creativelyunited.org. And I'd also first like to acknowledge that I'm broadcasting from the traditional territories of the Coast Salish people on beautiful Vancouver Island, for whom we give thanks for this privilege and their stewardship from time eternal. We have much to learn. So tonight's webinar will talk about the unity of youth climate and the social justice movement. And the panelists on this webinar are all young change makers who are invested in creating a more just and safer future for the next generations. And you're welcome to ask questions after each panelist has, they'll be asked a number of questions. So there'll be a chance for the audience to ask their own questions that directly pertain to that question that was just, and we'll answer them sort of live right now. On this panel, these beautiful youth will explore the importance of united actions for a better planet. And we all agree that the most effective change is locally grown but globally sown. And these changes come in the form of community gardens, creative projects, and local organizing groups, individuals. And change occurs within living systems, not from above or outside, but within, through local and diverse actions happening simultaneously on a global scale. And our panelists are aged 12 to 19, and they will speak to the diverse ways they grow change locally. And they'll use their unique voices and hands-on approaches. Some of these tools for change include using their artistic skills, their music skills, scientific exploration, ecological restoration, and much more. And these panelists will also speak to the importance of a unified movement and how they, as youth from Canada, Japan, and the United States, can come together to sow the seeds of global change and amplify each other's voices. They'll each be introducing themselves, so I'm going to turn it over to Katya. Are you going to start us off? Great. Thank you, Katya Bannister.
All right, thank you, Frances. So, I squeal and for Katia, it's entitled Unkunas Ho Hokuminum. Good day, my name is Katia, and I'm learning how to speak Hokuminum. I live on the unceded ancestral territory of the Coast Salish and Hokuminum speaking Masiwa, specifically the Penelkut tribe. In colonial terms, I live on a very small Gulf island named Thetis in the middle of the Salish Sea off the coast of British Columbia, Canada. I am a 16-year-old youth climate activist, community organizer, and exploring ecologist. So I use she, they pronouns, and I identify as a non-binary woman, and I am the leader of the Cowichan Valley Earth Guardians crew. Earth Guardians is a global youth-led organization that seeks to train diverse youth in the social, environmental, and climate justice movements. I am also a member of the Vote 16 BC campaign to lower the voting age to 16 in British Columbia, and a member of the British Columbia Youth Council. I love hiking, paddleboarding, honing my skills as a field ecologist, and I hope to pursue a career in ethnoecology in post-secondary school. And I am really, really grateful for the opportunity to speak with you all today. And Frances, if you just want to call another name of a youth, we didn't have an order set up, so.
Oh, okay. Oh boy. Actually, why don't I let you pass it off? Because I think that's how we've done it before and it's just worked so well.
Okay, awesome. I'd like to call on Jasmine to introduce herself then.
Hello, my name is Jasmine Hashay. My preferred pronouns are she and her. I am on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish and Hokuminum speaking peoples, specifically the Cowichan people. I am a 15-year-old Métis, climate, environmental, and social activist. I am from the Cowichan Valley, and I have been a member of the Cowichan Valley Earth Guardians, which is a chapter of the global organization Earth Guardians, since June 2019. I am now a Cowichan Valley Earth Guardians leader in training, and I've just completed 10th grade and will be starting 11th grade in the fall. I have plans to become an Indigenous family support worker after I finish high school, and I care deeply about social and climate justice, particularly Indigenous struggles. I am an activist because I have an understanding of the future I want for myself, the people around me, and the planet. I know that climate and social justice are not mutually exclusive, but completely rely on each other. I participate in the Cowichan Valley Earth Guardians through attending meetings, running social media accounts, petitioning, planning community events, and participating in direct actions such as protesting, restoration, and remediation work. Would you like me to pass it on to someone else now?
Yes, please. I'll have each of you do that. Just pass it on to the next person.
Okay, Mackenzie?
Hello, everybody. I'm Mackenzie Cumming. I currently occupy the muckiest land of the Blackfoot Confederacy, and I'm a 15-year-old climate environmental activist. I am part of Fridays for Future Calgary, the Calgary Climate Hub, and Climate Strike Canada. I think I covered everything. Julia, would you like to introduce yourself now?
Hi, I'm Julia. I live on the traditional lands of the Chilcotin. I'm part of the Greenologists Club, Be the Change Club, and I am the co-founder of Third Planet Crusade, Williams Lake, and I'm also part of the Williams Lake Youth Fiddlers. I'm 12, and my preferred pronouns are she and her. Ella?
Hi, my name is Ella Cruz. I live on traditional Chilcotin and Secwepemc territories, and otherwise known as Williams Lake. I also am the co-founder of Third Planet Crusade, and I'm really looking forward to, we in fact have a climate strike organized for tomorrow, which I'm really looking forward to. And my preferred pronouns are she, her. I'm also a part of the Greenologist Club, Be the Change Club, Climate Strike Canada, and now I am joining Amita Kuttner for her leadership race to the Green Party.
Rena?
Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Rena Kawasaki. I currently live in Japan, Osaka, and right now it's 10 in the morning here. And I am a social environmental activist here in Japan, and I started my own crew of Earth Guardians here about 3 weeks ago during quarantine. I also am a active member in the youth members of WWF. I hold workshops in the Philippines and in Japan in order to educate Japanese youth in leadership and activism. And I'm currently trying to run my crew in order to give them the needed training and facilitation and leadership in order for Japanese youth to give a global view inside the global community of youth activism.
All right. So I'd like to then wasn't that impressive right off the bat? I mean, hearing what you've heard, I see lots of nods. That's fantastic. So this is World Unity Week. And that's a big reason. That's the main reason why we're all here today. We're joining in on this fabulous week of activities. So I'd like to ask you all, and maybe I'll start with Katya. What does unity mean to you? And how does the idea of unity play into collaborating in diverse ways for global change? And I'll let you pass it off to the next person after that.
I think that unity in this type of work is key. I see a need for diverse, localized actions on a global scale and change that is locally grown and globally sown. And that's a phrase that I've come up with, and I really love it, and I'm probably going to say it a lot throughout the duration of this webinar, so I'm very sorry, but I hope it sticks in your head because it's very important. So taking action in unity is how we create the change that we want to see in the world. If we don't take diverse actions, or if we focus only on the same issues, we will not incite real change. We, in my mind, would be without unity. So we, as the youth here on this panel, as youth around the world, have been united by the power of the movement that Greta Thunberg started. We have been united by our collective fears and hopes for the future. We have been united by our shared passion for action. And a need to see real change in our world. Change in the form of creating inclusive spaces, change in the form of realistic and swift climate policy, change in the form of youth empowerment, change in the form of climate justice, and through all of us in unity.
To me, unity is just basically of all of us coming together, and right now we are experiencing unity as we're all coming together and learning, educating, and just sharing what we have in mind about climate activism and climate action in general. And I think that in terms of a better place, we need to make sure that we are all inclusive of everyone, and that is part of unity. And I think unity, almost like the word itself, sort of represents social and climate justice, because justice is of everyone being included and equal in a way. And I think that it is very important for all of us to realize what's going on in the world, and all of us to stand together in unity for this issue of climate.
Excellent. Well said once again. Thank you. So I'm going to move on to another question, and maybe I'll give Mackenzie heads up that I'm going to ask you this, as well as Ella and Jamie. So what inspires you or compels you to fight for social and climate justice?
To be quite frank, I started striking for climate mostly because I was scared. Like, I'm scared of what could happen to this world if we don't take pertinent action now. And I'm also outraged at the lack of climate policies, well, real climate policies that are going to make a change. But now I've found that the reason that I've continued since the first little spark was because of the community, because everyone's so uplifting and empowers me in a way I've never really felt. They're people who make me realize that it's a bigger movement than myself, and it's a movement that has power, and it's a movement that we're all a part of.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Julia, I'm sorry, I'm going to throw that over to you next.
I guess what compels me to fight for climate justice is that, like, if I don't strike or protest or go on these meetings, nobody will really listen to me. Like, even the adults who are telling the other adults that this is a real issue, they're not listening. So maybe if all the youth come together and educate everyone on the climate change, then people will listen and actually do something about it.
Great. Yes. And Ella, would you like to comment on this?
I think that, yeah, for sure, that there, especially living in a very small town like this, there's lots of times where we've experienced that. And I think just meeting other people from other places in BC and Canada and even globally really helps us spread our message to all the youth.
So I realized I didn't put out to our viewers that they have an opportunity to ask questions. I guess we're going to ask them after each. If there were any questions so far, please feel free to ask on either of those two questions. So the first one was, what is unity and why is it important? And the second one was, why do these beautiful people fight for social and climate justice? Are there any questions from anyone at this point?
A question I would love to ask is, what is the relationship between peace and unity? And see if any of the young people have seen to try to blend that. What's the relationship as you see it?
I believe that unity is needed to achieve peace in a global scale. Without unity from everyone, and even youth, and even governments, and even any person that's living in this world right now, you need unity, and you need everyone to be passionate about these issues and environmental issues and social issues that's going on in the world right now, in order to have a sense of unity to create this peace that we're trying to achieve.
Wonderful. Peter, what do you think of that answer?
Whoosh! It sounds like she'd answered that one before.
Oh, I tell you, that was great. And I just picking these brilliant minds out of the blue here. So anyone else want to respond, or shall we? Yes, Katya, please.
I think that when we are united in this idea of unity, when we have this common goal, when we have something that we are all working towards together, that there isn't a way that we couldn't find peace in that, you know, setting our sights on the same thing and walking together in the same direction. How could we not find peace and unity in that? And I think in that way, it's kind of interchangeable almost, because when we are united, we are probably at peace.
Right.
The
Nice.
power of manifesting, right? Like where you put your time and attention to, right?
I think this is really the core, if I may add another minute here.
Mm-hmm.
And this is so 26 years in my world anyway, since I got downloaded this idea that there need to be more than just the way we were looking at peace. And what's more than peace, right? And what emerged from that is that peace has always been kind of this let's get along kind of thing. And that then you know, anti-war came as part of it too. Let's not fight, let's get along. But that's not the end of peace, but we've kind of made it the stopping point for peace for a long time. And for 50 years now, there's been a peace movement that has failed miserably on every count. I mean, we can say we did a few things okay, but in general, we really haven't. We still other everything. We still make other out of everything we possibly can. And that's the core thing. This separation mentality is the core thing that disrupts us from what's beyond peace. And maybe we can have peace with some people that agree with us, but we haven't even started to figure out how to have peace with people that don't agree with us. We can barely even have a conversation. We can barely even have a conversation in the country I live in, America, around how to lead, how a government should lead, because we're so polarized and so stuck in our own ideas. So we're untangling this knot that is a whole different question and line of questionings than where we've been pointed at, as I see it.
I would just like to add that recently in a lot of media, we've been hearing about the Black Lives Matter movement, and there's been a phrase that keeps coming up, no justice, no peace, which is very real. Without justice, like whether it be social or climate, we have no peace, and that there will be no peace for oppressors until there is justice for marginalized groups. And sometimes the end goal is of course peace, but sometimes to get there, there has to be a bit of uprising or a bit of just people taking action and not being complicit.
Agreed. Wouldn't you, Peter? You agree with that?
Absolutely. This is when you untangle, right? It's like, oh wait, it's all of us. Peace has to be all of us, or it's none of us, right? That the oppressor and the oppressed, and yeah, and we're learning about that. Hasn't COVID pointed so many fingers at that too? I think that COVID really pointed us to, hey, we're all really connected. What I do can affect you. What I do can kill you, right? My germs can kill you. And when we dared to really grasp that, you saw the world go, oh, wow, right? And pull back and go back home. And oh my goodness, we've got to look at this a whole new way. And it's got to be all of us. And now we're dealing with how do we come back from COVID? And this is going to be an interesting dance for our species to move back into this. But then what came on the heels of COVID was the racial part that has been the granddaddy of them all in our ability to separate ourselves from each other. And that we could even separate ourselves by the color of our skin, right? That to even just begin to take that in. Wow, right? That we're such a naive species and we're just making up crazy stuff, right? I saw William and River there. I didn't want to say that other S word.
It was implied. We knew.
Okay, you guys got that? Okay, wink, wink.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
All right.
So,
well, thank you, Peter. Thinking about the idea that the most effective change is locally grown and globally sown, how does that make you think or feel? I mean, what does this look like to you? I'm going to say Katja and then Ella.
Thank you, Francis. So this is a little phrase that I've coined, and it's something that I wanted to be able to share with you in this format. So we built a little question around it. So when I say that effective change is locally grown and globally sown, I am saying that it is our collective, localized actions that will build to something so much deeper, so much more powerful. They will be powerful in the way that we engage our communities in place and understanding place, as well as the issues that impact our place most. Therefore, establishing strong relationships with the land that we live on and that we ourselves care for. I think that it's important to mention because it's easy to hear about something happening a world away, especially now in this digital age of social media, Wi-Fi, and the internet. But it is immensely difficult so often to witness injustice or ecological destruction when it is happening in our backyards, whether it is seeing a forest that has been standing your entire life felled, or knowing that the First Nations reserve closest to you does not have clean drinking water, even though it is less than 2 kilometers from a bustling city. The injustices most visible and most deeply felt by us are the ones that we can most meaningfully and impactfully take action on, in my mind. And if everyone takes action on the issues that are closest to them, and then collectively and globally, we will be able to achieve justice. But in order to do this, we have to take diverse, localized actions on a global scale. And although that doesn't sound quite as good as saying that effective change is locally grown and globally sown, I think the latter is a little bit more catchy. And I'm proud of myself for coming up with that. So I'd love to give Ella the opportunity to speak now.
I'd say, like, in this way, that I think that we need to start our movement as a smaller group. And the thing is, if there is one city in the world, say Vancouver, and they have everyone come out and they climate strike, it's a big deal. Yes, it's a lot of people, but I think the impact comes when it's everyone doing it, and it's a bunch of places across the world are the people that are all taking action. And we all need to start. We start as a group, and in our local area, and then as we slowly build out our connections and everything, and this is a worldwide movement that is happening, but obviously, like, we can't all just go to one place. So the power in the whole thing is that we're all in separate areas.
There is a question here. Yes, I see that. Thank you, William, River, and Wendy. Where did the youth get their inspirations, and what age did this start? And what would you suggest to inspire those younger than you?
My inspiration came from going to my first climate strike. It was a really big moment for me. And even just in the car on the ride there, I did not know what it would mean to me. An hour later, half an hour later, something big, something huge was about to happen in my life, and I didn't even understand that on the way there. I couldn't recognize its significance beforehand, but afterwards, looking back now, it's crazy to me how I could not have. So that was a little more than a year ago, so I've been doing this work for only a little more than a year, but I've been a nature lover my whole life, and I've always been interested in ecology. And what I would suggest to inspire and include people younger than me is finding older kids, teenagers such as myself, to hang out with and do stuff with. I really value the intergenerational aspect of the work that we do, and sometimes that is youth talking to adults and making sure our voices are heard at the table. But also sometimes that's inclusion and friendships that are between teens and younger kids, and being able to have that mentorship and have that friendship, and hopefully sometimes be a role model that a younger kid could look up to. And I see that with me and my little brother. Sometimes he wants to come along with me to events that I'm putting on. And I think that is so incredibly special. And I know that if I was anywhere near you guys, I would love to have you guys come out to an event and hang out. It would be really awesome. So yeah, that's my answer.
Excellent. Thank you. Yay, William, River, and Wendy, you seem to like that. So that's great. Just keep those kind of questions coming because we love having you here. This is really important that you're here. So thank you. Anyone else want to answer that one? Rihanna, thank you.
I just wanted to say that I don't think age matters in whatever you do. We are really fortunate that our young age is giving us a spotlight in this global community and environmental actions and activism. But really, it doesn't matter what age you start. Although the media likes to give attention to younger climate activists, there are climate activists in every generation, and they should be getting spotlights. But well, I am privileged that I am able to start at a young age, but I believe that anyone can start if they have a passion and if they are able to keep going with that and commit to that. So yeah, don't get discouraged by your age or wherever you come from.
Great answer. Yes. So you can start anytime. Oh, and I love it. Mackenzie's jumping in.
Yeah, I would say start with any little part. Like it's not, you don't have to be striking, you don't have to be doing huge like things, but just any action that is propelling you and your community towards a more sustainable future. Everything counts in this movement. And I think we sometimes forget that with the big strikes. And obviously systematic change is very important, but it's also individual change. It does have an impact. There's 8 billion people. If every one of us did something, the world would be so much better.
Well said, Mackenzie. I can totally agree. So you guys, there's all kinds of things that can be done, and you're probably doing. So given that you're affiliated with Peter, I'm assuming. So anyone else, or should I move on to the next question? All right, I think I'm moving on. So COVID-19, this pandemic, has obviously changed a lot for all of us. So how has your social distancing and quarantining experience changed your activism and organizing? Jasmine, would you like to jump in on that one?
I am from the Cowichan Valley Earth Guardians, and our activism and community planning and organizing has changed so drastically. We had many exciting events planned for this time that ended up being quarantining due to the pandemic. Our events that we had planned included a restoration day in celebration of World Planting Day, a climate strike for April 3rd, and then a month later, a community and art education event for World Bee Day. My crew usually meets once a week on Friday, and during this pandemic, we have increased that to 3 meetings a week. All these meetings serve different purposes. One meeting is for mental wellness, the other is a general meeting, and the one that we have every Wednesday is to paint signs together to participate in a digital strike. The digital strike movement was started for people who could not attend strikes in person because they would be penalized by either their parents or their schools, but it has really taken off during this pandemic. We have also expanded to lots of different types of social media, including TikTok and Twitter, and we've started our own blog. We also had an event called a Green Recovery Town Hall that we organized with 4 our kids and 1 Cowichan. Have you done? Yes, Katia is right. We do have a bunch of digital strikers here.
Excellent.
If you don't know what a green recovery is, a green recovery is the idea that, okay, so we've been hearing a lot from our governments about making a swift economic recovery from COVID-19 and returning to normal as soon as possible. We know as climate justice activists that we cannot let this happen. We must push our governments, municipal, provincial, and federal, to look through a climate lens when planning the recovery of our economy, and most importantly, our society. The Green Recovery movement is about bouncing back after COVID-19 while also creating new jobs by decarbonizing our economy and society. The Cowichan Valley Earth Guardians crew, through that event, a professor from our Vancouver Island University, or VIU, was able to reach out to me and other panelists, Katia Bannister, to teach her education classes about youth climate activism. So a lot has changed, and we've definitely kept our momentum going, and we're not letting this slow us down. We're always recruiting new members and just working as hard as we can while not being able to physically come together.
Thank you. Now, William, River, and Wendy have asked, what is a digital strike and how does it work? And how is it do you go about being noticed effectively?
Okay, so I can answer that one like really quick, but
Please.
so a digital strike is you take a picture of yourself holding a sign and you post it on any social media. We usually share ours, the Cowichan Valley Earth Guardians. We put all of ours together into a little collage, and we share it on our Instagram and our Facebook. And we also send ours to Fridays for Future Digital, which is a Instagram, Twitter. They have everything, and they put all of the digital strikers together. And every week there's just thousands of them, instead of coming together in actual physical climate strikes. Yeah.
I just have something to add. It's the main way we get noticed is by tagging organizations, Fridays for Future Digital and Fridays for Future, along with our local politicians in order so that they'll hear the message that we're striking with. But it also relies a little bit on the algorithm of social media and how many followers and kind of how your account works. Those with private accounts might not get quite as much view, but it will also might seem a bit more personal, as you probably know everyone personally, whereas people publicly, it could be anyone on the internet could see it.
And the amount of attention that you get for a given post can be very variable. My first ever digital strike that I did, I posted on my personal Instagram account and I got almost 1,000 likes on it. And I only had at the time about 600 followers on Instagram. So I was quite shocked. I haven't gotten that many ever again, but I get in between say 160 and 400 usually, and it's really amazing to think that many people see the sign that I painted and see I do a big caption about a particular topic every week, and they get to see what I've written, and that's just so astounding to me that people read that and people like it and people want to see it. And I think in that way there's so much more of a message behind what we're doing, because at a physical climate strike, you just have your sign and you walk around, and it's really great to be together in community that way. But in the digital strike format, you really get to say what you want to say and have conversations with people around topics that you think are important. So I really love that aspect of the format.
Besides posting the photo, do you also stay offline for some amount of time?
I think that they're implying that like you're perhaps striking as in not going online for a while, and kind of to show that you're for climate or environment or situation. But no, most of us don't. In fact, I'm probably way more active the Friday when everyone else is striking, as I want to go through Instagram, find them, and support their messages. So there's not like a specific rule, and if you go offline or decide to stay on, it's really up to you. I think a lot of us are actually more active on Fridays just to support people's messages that they're putting out.
And particularly now in this time of COVID-19 and separation and not being able to be together in community in the ways that we have in the past, I think that a lot of us have really put a lot of value into being able to share our messages over social media and have upped our engagement that way, because something that I've been thinking a lot about right now is how do we not only let the movement not die out, keep it going, but how do we continue to build momentum? How do we use this time of COVID-19 to make something bigger, something better, something more creative, something more resilient, something stronger for after COVID-19. And I think that, well, I don't think that COVID-19 is ever really gonna 100% go away, but that's another thing. But I think that if we are able to survive this, survive being isolated and separate from our communities in these ways that I don't think a lot of us ever have been, then we can really survive anything. And I think that really just shows how committed we are and how impactful our voices and our messages are, and how they're going to stay strong for whatever is next to come.
Beautifully said. Now, Rena, did you want to add to the conversation too? What's happening in Japan in this way for you?
Yep, so I've always been active locally and within my school, but quarantine helped me connect to an online and global community more than ever. I signed up for this video competition that my teacher said that it will be like bigger and a big movement for this company called EarthX, and which I applied to, and I got second place in the views, and more than 1,000 people looked at my post and liked it, and even the director for EarthX looked at it, and that helped me reach out to Earth Guardians, which I moderated a panel for, and yeah, that really inspired me that these young people were helping contribute to climate change, to stop climate change and environmental issues and advocating for them. So that was really how I started with this whole thing. And I feel like humanity hasn't seen something like this where everyone is on the same platform and everyone's at home looking at their screens. And I think this is like the biggest impact that people can give right now, is that people are all online and it's really easy to reach out to different people, and I've made a lot of friends through Earth Guardians and the internet and social media for activism. And the whole reason why I'm here is that I looked at Katia's Instagram story, and I think that's really strange and interesting and somehow ironic that so we've been told that people have to gather and people have to be in the majority in order to make a difference, but I feel like in isolation and being alone in your house somehow makes a difference in the global community. So yeah, and I've been starting my own crew. My friends and I are going to start a little boutique and a little business online in order to like raise awareness for BLM. So if you can check that out, that would be amazing.
What's that business going to be called?
It's gonna be called the Raoul's Boutique. I'll put it in the chat.
Yes, please do. We'd love that. Now, I see that there's a lot of peace sign activity going on in the background there. So just really quickly, did you want to explain that sign? Because it's a very international thing. Peter?
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you, William and River are having fun with it. They learned about the unity sign in the last session. So we talk about how are we going to move this movement forward? How's it going to cross language barriers and racial barriers and religious barriers? And so this idea has been percolating in me for 26 years, believe it or not. It was downloaded to me in 1994 when I was at Woodstock, 25-year reunion. Anyway, so it's turned into this. It's turned into the unity sign. This old sign, it started off as V for Victory, is where this began with Winston Churchill. And then in the 60s, the movement picked it up to say, let's have peace, let's not fight. And that was a very strong movement for a long time. But over the years, it's gotten a little washed away in my experience. It doesn't stand for something real bold. And so now we have something to stand for something bold. We used to think we were separate, is now what this means. And we are right now remembering, your fingers come together as they come to your heart. We're remembering that we are one family on one planet, co-creating one future. And when we come from that heart-based unity consciousness, we can act together peacefully on the planet. So it's a peace in, peace out expression that can spark the conversation about unity, right? You do this sign and people say, what's that? Is that a funky kind of new peace sign? And you said, yes, it's beyond peace. It's unity. It's where we're all headed. And so that's the unity sign. And I'd be honored if you guys wanted to share it in whatever capacity. And it's happening already. So
All right, well, let's finish with that one. So thank you. So what is a social or climate justice issue that impacts you or your community directly? Jasmine, would you like to take that?
I'm from Vancouver Island, which is on the coast of British Columbia and the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people. We are known for copious amounts of salmon in our rivers and seas, and in the past summer, our population is dying off completely. Our salmon population. This is due to our increasingly hot summers. The return of the Cowichan Chinook declined from 10,000 spawners in the early 1990s to a low of only a few hundred natural spawners in 2009. Between the years 1995 and 2006, the Cowichan River Chinook salmon were in critical decline. The indicator used to measure this was salmon per productivity, meaning the number of adult salmon produced per spawner. The less salmon means less food for the southern resident orcas, which results in starving orcas and orca die-off.
That's orca whales, for anyone who doesn't know what an orca is.
Yeah, sorry. The salmon are also a traditional food for the Coast Salish people of the area. The tradition of catching and smoking salmon is important to the revitalization of culture. This past summer, our rivers ran almost completely dry, yet in the winter we experienced floods that resulted in people losing their homes and animal habitat destruction. These floods particularly impacted the Indigenous people living on reserve because the reserves are floodplains. Indigenous people on islands of the west coast of Canada are experiencing the impacts of climate crisis at overwhelming rates. Seeing this is devastating. The climate crisis is no joke to these communities. Colonization led to the climate crisis and the impacts that it has on Indigenous people. It is our responsibility to come together and stop this crisis before it completely demolishes cultures.
Well said. Thank you. Ella, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, so I think that we've definitely seen the effect of climate change in the past couple of years, like a lot, and especially in my community, we are very an industrial town, and there is, like, I know some places they're not necessarily where most of the income comes from is in industries and industrial things. So here it's a bit different, and that's where most people get their income from. And I think that definitely for other people who live in like bigger cities that necessarily see that, they can see like here the impact of climate change. And I also think a big thing with climate change is like how, especially me, I've noticed like how warm our winters have been and stuff like that, that if you're anywhere in the world, you can notice that the actual climate and the weather from a day-to-day basis is changing.
I just want to say one of the climate issues in our town is the burning of rail ties. It's a big debate. And also one of the mines are proposing like to build a mine in Fish Lake, which is west of Williams Lake in the Cowichan, and all the native councils are saying no to it, but they keep proposing it and being declined. So I guess that's a big issue.
Wow, thanks. I'm sorry to hear that. That's quite a worry, isn't it? The next question I'd love to ask is, how do you use your unique skills, talents, and passions to change and spread awareness about the issues you care about? Katya, do you want to start with that one?
One of my passions is writing, and during the first couple weeks where I had to stay at home and socially distance because of COVID-19, I did something that I've been wanting to do for a really long time. I started a blog. So I love writing. I love fleshing out my ideas, researching, learning, sharing the things that I think need to be said. And that's what blogging is to me. It's equal parts an opportunity to educate and engage and an opportunity to be creative. So I'm just going to put my blog in the chat. You definitely don't have to check it out, but
I think you definitely should check it out. Hello, that's why you're on here. You got something to say, that's for sure, and you need to be heard. So what about Rena? Do you want to jump in on this question?
Well, ever since I was little, I like doing theater and I like doing musicals and I like singing and dancing. And Right now, I'm doing a contemporary piece, a dance piece dedicated to mental illness and anxiety and depression, because in Asian culture, it's definitely something that's overlooked. Like, you have to work hard to get where you have to go, but sometimes it's really ignored, and sometimes it's often just called laziness. So I wanted to, as an Asian person and as a part of the Asian community, I wanted to spread awareness about it. So I did a contemporary piece, and right now I'm in almost the finals of the competition, which is pretty exciting. So that's what I've been doing. And also I use singing and in my school's musical theater group in order to spread awareness about happiness and, just bringing a little happiness into everyone's lives in this rough time. Yeah.
Beautiful. And I know that Julia, who we can't see just at this moment, but on our program that we did at Earth Fest, Julia helped open and close the program with some of her musical talent. And that was very much appreciated. So every way that you can put your many talents to use, I'm sure you do, and I hope to inspire. I hope you're inspired to continue doing so. Anyone else have any comments to add? Or
I just wanted to make a quick comment that when I was in my 20s, I loved to write and I loved to do things, and I had this limiting belief that I'm too young. Who wants to hear what I have to say? So I have to wait until I get older in order to write. So I just want to say how impressed I am with all of you for speaking your voice and knowing in your heart and soul and embodying your message is important, and you are putting it out there. And I just wanted to say, so impressed. Keep going.
Aw, thank you. Yeah, that's what I think that. Yes, we can't thank them enough, really. What you're doing is really incredible. What organizations or projects are you affiliated with, and what work do you do with them, and why is this important? Jasmine, do you want to jump in?
Yes. Like many of the other panelists, I work with the global organization Earth Guardians. The Earth Guardians trains diverse youth to be effective leaders in the environmental, climate, and social justice movements across the globe, using art, music, storytelling, and on-the-ground projects, civic engagement, and legal action to advance solutions to the critical issues we face as a global community. They do this through creating and training Earth Guardians crews. These crews range from 10 to several hundred young people per crew. They represent the heart and soul of the organization. These are the young activists and artists and musicians that are on the front lines, driving action and creating the cultural shift towards a regenerative future. That's just from their website, but what I do for my crew, which is the Cowichan Valley Earth Guardians crew, I joined in the beginning of June 2019. I was hesitant to make this commitment at first, as I was nervous and I was very shy, but it felt right, and I knew that I needed to do something. And I dove into this community, and once I realized what it was, I had no intention of ever leaving. My first few months, I went on to help with organizing multiple events, petitioning, and running booths at community events. I had never felt so alive and so full of hope. The work that we do is important because of the positive impacts that it has on the environment, but also because it empowers youth. I often hear older generations say things like the youth are the future. And although this is said with the purest intent, it is important to acknowledge that we are also the now. We are dealing with so much injustice, but we are also doing so much about it. Over this past year that I've been in this activism community, I found so many like-minded people. And I just thought it was so, Earth Guardians is such a great opportunity for anybody that is looking to get involved at any age level.
So Rena, I'm going to turn that question over to you now.
Yep. So I work with Earth Guardians, as most of these people do, and Jasmine did a pretty good introduction of it, so I wouldn't be going into depth of what the organization does, but I started it and crew during quarantine, and we have over 20 members right now that are willing to make a change here in Japan, which is really heartwarming to see because I didn't know that so much people wanted to make a change in my own community, so that was pretty amazing to see. And sorry, my notifications are on, but so I work with another company, I guess, called EarthX, which hosts conventions and are working towards a more business and economic type standard and aspect of this whole environmental issue activism thing. And this summer I'm working as an intern in order to research about social media and how EarthX can try to venture out in social media and try to reach a more younger audience and more of an audience level that I'm in, I guess. Yeah, so I'm going to do research for them this summer. And also I am planning to work for an organization called Global Issues Network, which is like a big convention conference thing that brings youth from global community together to present about their projects, their aspirations in a workshop format. And if I get in, I'm going to be designing curriculums for for that organization in order to help them and other youth from around the world trying to achieve things that they've achieve different aspects inside environmental activism and issues. Yes, I've worked with them before for a workshop that I did in the Philippines. So yeah, that was pretty awesome. So those are the projects I've been working on.
Impressive. Thank you. Wow. And Mackenzie, do you want to share too?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm an active member of Fridays for Future Calgary along with the Calgary Climate Hub, and I'm also part of Climate Strike Canada, but I'm not really going to talk about that. With Fridays for Future Calgary, I'm a member of the media committee where I research and write our social media posts. Social media is a big part of what we do, as it allows us to reach a much bigger audience than just those who see us while we're striking at City Hall. It's also very important during this pandemic, as most of us aren't out and about with their daily lives. We also have a much younger audience on Instagram where we're most active. It's important for young people to create media for other young people, as it doesn't seem like always being forced upon them, and assures that it's understandable and useful for teens like us. My apologies. A lot of the climate and environmental resources out there are either simply just don't waste paper or are very complex research on, say, flooding or any other topic, and either of those are very useful or interesting to a majority of teens. By creating resources geared towards teens and young adults, we're helping young people expand their knowledge and take pertinent action surrounding social and climate justice issues. Also, as I mentioned, I'm a member of the Calgary Climate Hub, where I'm the youth representative for the Central Node. I've only recently started this, but it's awesome to be able to bridge the gap between two organizations and also between generations. At the Calgary Climate Hub, there's a lack of diversity. It's mainly people who are in their 40s or 50s and who are academic or business leaders. It's not of their own, of course. There's simply a demographic that's interested in climate action in Calgary, but it's also not representative of what all of us need. Their actions are all solely focused on reducing Calgary's greenhouse gas emissions and not on the intersectionality that young strikers like us are working for. I certainly live with a lot of the same privileges as most of them, but I'm hoping that I'm adding a different perspective on the actions and campaigns that the Hub is doing. It's also important to bridge the gap between generations, as we're all fighting for the same thing. It's easy to find yourself divided by age, but instead we can all work together towards a common goal. It also helps us share resources between organizations and to really maximize the effect that both our organizations can have. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Sorry, that was kind of long.
Not at all. And you didn't have to rush because there's so much there. It was just great. So the work that you do is partly responsible due to the foundation and actions potentially built by and taken by past activists. And so how does that impact you? Do you think that we're at a pivotal moment in activism history? Does that mean something to you that there were activists before you? Katya, do you want to take that question?
So I think that the movement that Greta Thunberg started is one that has been a long time in the making, and she was the right person at the right time. And we see examples of this phenomena throughout history, but of course, since I'm live, I can't think of any right now. But over time, an idea builds, a need builds, and then suddenly there is someone who comes along at the right time and says the right thing and brings that idea or the need into the spotlight. And maybe that person comes along when there's a high enough level of acceptance, or maybe they are the first to say it and have it speak to people, and maybe they are the first person to say it at all, and maybe they're not. But for whatever reason it is, someone is finally able to breach that barrier and reach the masses and incite something unprecedented. So, however, we would not be here today without the work of those who came before us. Scientists, indigenous land protectors, climate activists, social activists, people who campaign for recycling programs worldwide, tree huggers, naturalists, all those sorts of people. We would not be here without those people who said it before us, and gave to us the knowledge from which to say, we need tangible action now, because we will not be the last generation, but we will be the last generation who has to campaign in the way that we are doing now. I don't want, and I have actually signed a pledge to not be having children, but I do not want my friends' children. I do not want my friends' grandchildren to have to feel the fear that I do, to have to wonder what is coming in the future. I want everyone to be engaged in this way and feel this passion that I do, but I don't want that to have to come from a place of fear. I want that to come from a place of passion, something that begins naturally and something that we nurture in the children. And so, yeah, I think we really do exist in a pivotal moment in history, because I think this is all of us saying no. I think this is all of us saying that we're not going to let anyone else have to feel like this, because we are really going to stop the systems that are oppressing us, that are holding back change. And we are going to say, yes, we are going to be the people who are going to make that change. And we are thankful for that foundation that has been laid by everyone else who came before us.
Wow, that's poignant. Thank you for sharing that, Katya. All right, so how do you think being a youth climate and social activist has changed the way you see the world, or has it even changed you? Should we jump to, because Katya answered the last one, Jasmine, maybe?
I became, so in early May of 2019, I kind of lost all the hope that I had for the planet, in the way of social justice, but also in the way of climate justice. And that was just over a year ago, and since then my life has completely changed. In May of 2019, I started to feel an overwhelming sense of dread for our planet. And ever since I was 11 or 12 years old, I had always been very interested in activism of all of its forms, but I had never really taken an action. I didn't know how I could help or how I could create change. But then when I was introduced to the idea of climate striking, something just clicked for me, and I knew right away that I needed to have a climate strike. So I did. I organized a strike all on my own that took place on May 24th, a week after I attended my first climate strike, organized by the Cowichan Valley Earth Guardians before I was a member. This was what Katya would call a defining moment for me. My life felt like bearable again, and I had felt an immense sense of pride that I had never felt before. And I knew that this couldn't be my last time organizing. This organizing and this community of activists saved me from this sense of dread that I had. And it makes me see the world in more of a sometimes in a much more hopeful view, but also sometimes more in a very critical way of thinking. And I know that I'm definitely a better person than I was before I became an activist that was taking direct actions.
Jasmine, I'd like to second that, because the whole reason I started Creatively United was out of this feeling of dread and despair. Back in 2010, it started to form, and by 2012, I held the first giant Earth Festival ever, and I was never ever anticipated I'd be organizing thousands of people to come to an Earth Day event if you had asked me, prior to this. But the passion and the desire to bring people together just became so strong. I'd love to also, I think this is a question really for everybody if we can, but let's ask Mackenzie as well. I'd love to hear how being a youth climate and social activist changed the way you see the world and how it's changed you.
Yeah, thank you. So I only joined Fridays for Future in February of this year. So shortly after I joined Fridays for Future Calgary, we found ourselves in a global pandemic. So for the first while between activism and COVID-19, my world was completely turned upside down. Along with the onslaught of terrible news about the consequences of COVID-19, I found myself aware of injustices and crises that I've never known nor contemplated. This has led to a bit of a rough patch of mental health. I've constantly been feeling that there are just too many problems in this world and there isn't anything I can do to help. But I'm also, through activism work, I'm feeling like I'm doing something worthwhile. Because I know I am. I know that my actions, they have meaning down the road. They will have an impact, and it's a kind of fulfillment that I've never really experienced before. I'm proud to be a little tiny piece of this movement that is changing our world.
Aw, thank you. I'm glad you are. And Ella, would you like to jump in next?
Sure. Yeah. So I started. Julia and I organized a strike. When I think we started organizing when we were both 10. I was 11 and I think Julia was 10. But and we when we organized that strike, I think partially both of us out of, I'm not sure for Julia, so maybe I'll let her speak after too. But out of a sort of sense, I definitely organized it out of a sort of sense of like dread, as well as like Mackenzie was saying and Jasmine was saying too. And I think the other thing that I didn't, until that moment, I didn't really realize how bad everything was. And it was just like sort of almost like an eye-opener to like start organizing strikes. And then I just slowly started getting more involved in the movement. And all the people I met have been super great and super supportive and kind. And it's just a really great, it's a good thing that people are doing something about it, and we're no longer in denial, and we are changing because there is a movement.
To be honest, I didn't really know anything about climate change until Ella kind of brought it to my attention, and then it kind of just escalated from when we first started planning the strike. But I guess every day, like on a not so deep scale, every day, like when I'm driving somewhere, I wonder how long this would take for me to walk, or if I'm at the grocery store, and since COVID started, we can't use reusable bags anymore, I always feel like really guilty after using a plastic bag.
Fair enough. Yeah. There's so many things to feel guilty about, but we really got to focus on feeling positive, because in all the ways that you counter that with what you're doing, we've got to remind ourselves we're really working hard, and not try to beat ourselves up for, our society's been set up this way, and we're trying to unwind that in the best way we can for the sake of everyone's greater good. Rena, would you be willing to jump in and answer this question as well? Like, how do you think being a youth climate and social activist has changed the way you see the world, and how has it changed you?
So I don't know about anyone else, but I was really frustrated that I had to do something at first. Like, why do I at such a young age have to sacrifice something of my life in order to help this generation and the people around the world? And I was really unwilling to join any projects at first. And I just want people to know that not everyone who's in this field right now had like that, had like a, I don't know, talent or something that they were born with. It's something that they come to realize and come to grow inside of them. So that's one thing for me. And when I first joined this field, it was a feminist march, and it was a women's march that I attended when I was in the 4th grade, and I was all alone. I went there without any assistance, and it really came to realize that everyone is willing to listen to me. And I did an article about that when I was in the 4th grade. I interviewed people in the women's march who were willing to listen to me and willing to answer my questions, which was a really impactful journey for me, that I could do something and I could make a change and I could spread the message about people that are suffering and people that need the voice that I had. So that was a realization for me that was really great. And so whenever I saw issues that I could work with and issues that I can see right now on social media, I jumped to whatever chance I can. So being a youth activist and being a social advocate about different issues and global issues and the SDGs, I think I came to the realization that I can do something and everyone else can do something if they have the strive and they have the dedication that they have and are willing to help with anything. So yeah, that was like a realization for me as a youth advocate.
Excellent. Thank you. Katya, let's hear from you now.
So doing this work has definitely changed my life and how I see everything that is around me. It's hard now because I constantly feel like part of the problem. And there doesn't feel like there's any way to stop being part of the problem. In the past, I've said it's unfair, as this has been done, and it is something that I have experienced, for adult naysayers to discredit the youth of youth climate and social activists because we own a car or we own a cell phone, because we participate in the world as it is. And that is so unfair, though. How do we create any change if we don't participate in these systems? How do we network and do outreach without our electronics in a world that is ever becoming more digitalized and globalized? How do we attend meetings that people want our opinions expressed at if we don't have access to a car? I know that in my community, public transit is not reliable enough for me to be able to get somewhere. But all we can do is participate in these systems the best that we can with the least amount of impact. I know that I carpool, I use public transit when it's actually there for me to use. I shop locally, I buy used. I know all I can do is reduce my consumption in this world that's just begging me to consume, and then penalizes me when I do, as demonstrated by those adult naysayers who are saying that I can't have a voice in this because I own a cell phone. I know that about 100 companies are responsible for, I think, 71% of global carbon emissions. So it doesn't really matter if I need to charge my phone, but I still feel so bad about it. Despite trying so hard and devoting so much of this past year of my life to activism, I still feel like a drain on this earth. I still feel so unnatural, like I'm not supposed to be here or be here in this way. And I've cried about it. I've cried myself to sleep over the state of our world. And I know that I will not have children of my own because I am too fearful of what our future holds. And I don't want to be the last generation. I just want our species as a whole to do better, you know? And as much as I feel this pain and carry it with me constantly, and I feel this fear about what our future looks like because of climate change, I do feel hope. And hope is brought to me through this work, through activism, through my fellow panelists who are here today, who saw me put this out on my Instagram story and made the effort to message me and say, hey, I have something I want to say, and I want to be here with you on this panel and talk to the world, or as much of the world as who bothers to see this video. And there are many others too, youth from all over the world that I know now because of getting involved with climate activism. But as much as I am afraid, I know that I am doing all that I can. I know that we are all our own best hope for action. And I know that my voice as a young person is important. And the community that I find here in this work is honestly beyond words. When I feel like the world is bearing down on me, I look to my best friends who are my fellow organizers, and I find hope and I find strength in them. Collectively, we fight the threat of climate change, but we also fight for each other and for each other's well-being. We are a team, and we are a movement, youth across the world fighting for unity. And I think that it is important to acknowledge all those pieces, all those moving parts. There is the fear, there is the hope, there is the anger, there is everything else and everything in between. And there is also us, and we are here, and we made an effort to show up today. And there are the few people in the audience who came to talk to us live, and they made the effort to show up today. And I know that we're all making an effort to show up today and show up tomorrow and show up in life in this way. And that it's us and the people who bother showing up that are really gonna create the change. And that is also what I see now. I see people showing up, and that's what gets rid of all the pain and the hurt. Seeing other people want the same thing as me, even if we can't tangibly identify every aspect of that thing, I know that we are all pointed in that same direction. And we want unity, and we want justice, and we want a better, safer world.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Wow. Okay. That's like, yeah, you all just speak so eloquently. Oh, and look I heard a dog barking. Is that your dog? Yeah. It was like it was going, yes. I have to say that, wow, like move over, Martin Luther, and here you are. You all have a voice that is so powerful, and what brings me, like I relate to every single one of you, and what really brings me there is hearing you and knowing that this whole world has been created to make us feel like there's no hope, there's no chance, that there's nothing we can do, that forget about it, why vote, it doesn't matter. And when we give into that, we're giving into the dark side. I don't know any other way to put it. So we need to be the light. We need to be the light keepers, because there's so many people just like us doing this type of work. And did you guys ever see A Bug's Life, the little film way back? Yeah, I think there's a scene in there where all the big carpenter ants are like shaking, because they're the ones that are supposed to be like the 1%, and they're shaking, and they're saying to each other, if all those other ants only knew how few of us there are and how many there are of them. And they were like, oh, and so we really do have a lot of power. And I do feel like through collective consciousness, and we're learning so much about quantum physics right now, that we know that the power of our thoughts is very, very powerful, and the power of our actions that come from those thoughts, very, very powerful. So we are, and I think Peter would probably agree, we are hitting a tipping point now where there's no return. And in fact, I've heard, and this is what keeps me inspired, I've heard from many wise wisdom keepers, and maybe you have too, Indigenous leaders especially, who have been given messages from their ancestors that we're in this new age of enlightenment. And it started a while back, although it's not apparent to us so much right now. We are the beginning of the Renaissance. We are creating the Renaissance. And the Renaissance, when we think back to what we've learned in school about the Renaissance, it came out of the bubonic plague. So, you know, it takes that shift, and we're like, Mother Nature is actually provided us, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure many of you, with a gift with this COVID to really take stock of what's important to us and slow down and look and go within and start to see what matters. But just know you're not alone, and to realize that every negative thought attracts another negative thought. So it's so powerful as light workers for us to keep our thoughts positive and bright, because we only want to attract the light, right? And I know how hard it gets. We all have to cry and we all have to feel it. But we have to all remind each other that we're here for each other. So Peter, did you want to add anything?
Well, I would love to try to take my heart right back to the end of Katya's talk and ask any of the other young people to share what it felt like to hear Katya say that. You probably may have heard her say that before, but I would love to hear from each of you finding that heart space. This is what us grown-ups need to hear, is you guys willing to go there and not just to go there. So please pick up where Katya left off and share your heart. We need to hear this.
Like, we have to remember that there was so much change happening right now, and so much change that we can create. Like, less than 2 years, or I guess, yeah, but less than 2 years ago, having kids striking and being like part of this fight was unheard of. And now we've done so much. Like, there's been millions of kids and, well, people around the world who have contributed to climate strikes and climate organizing and just this change. And it's so powerful to think about that, just how much change there is. And it's inspiring to know how much more change we can create.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just like to say that everyone that I've worked with so far is so inspirational and so ahead of their age. And yeah, I don't really want to put focus on the age, but you know, it's really hard for people that are kind of, the system is trying to stop them from talking and trying to make them listen and learn from the people that came before them to it's really hard for youth to teach other people, and it's hard to make other people listen, because the system is like that way, and I don't blame them for that. But I think it's really important that everyone gets a voice and everyone gets to talk, and everyone gets to show their passions and show what they think of the world, because it's their world and you can't say anything about that, and you can't say anything about other people's lives. And yeah, the fact that a lot of people are trying to put anyone down for having their own opinions and having their passions and having to make that action is really astounding to me, that any person will try to do that. So I think it's really important that youth and anyone in general, in any generation, come to stand up and come to think about what that action or what that issue means to them. And yeah, it's important that everyone has a voice.
I just want to say that I'm just really happy that everyone came up and we could just, all share experiences and share everything that we've done. And for whoever watches this, I'm very grateful that you watched this and you can hear what we have to say. And I just want to thank everyone that for being here and listening to us. And yeah.
Hi, Ella, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What's the hardest part about climate change and the lockdown for you?
I would say probably the hardest part. I am a very social person, so that part is hard. But the whole climate issue, I think it's a little bit hard to keep your momentum going. Like, we had a strike planned for April 3rd, and to cancel that was pretty sad. And so I think the whole momentum going thing was hard. And also, when you plan all these events and then they can't go through, it's a little bit sad too.
Yeah, I hear you there. I'm an event producer myself, so I'm dealing with all of that in the sadness because we have so much energy that we've put forward. And so thank you. And I'd love to ask who, if someone else has. Jasmine, have you answered the tap back into what Katya had said? I'd love to, or just ask you, what's the hardest part and how's it feel?
The hardest part of the climate crisis for me is really thinking about this sounds a bit selfish, but just like how will it affect me personally? And that means like I live like as a couple, like as I know a few of you other people do, I live on Vancouver Island or on an island on the coast of British Columbia, and it's like, do we know what's going to happen? How much longer till, like I live right on the water, like how much longer does my house have till it's under the water, you know, with sea level rise? And as the sea is getting bigger, but it's getting more acidic, and all of our like animals will die off because of ocean acidification. And I'm just worried about like, I know that now like I won't be able to have kids, or like I want to be an Indigenous family support worker, and I know that Indigenous communities are like one of the most impacted by the climate crisis. Like, how will this affect them? And it's just really like, how is it going to change my life? Because I've been promised a certain type of life by media that I know that I'm not going to be able to have now.
Thank you. Katya.
Yeah, I think like it's not supposed to sound entitled. I don't think any of us really think that anybody owes us anything, but in the way that our future is presented to us, even just in the school system, where we're working towards graduating, towards getting into post-secondary, towards having this career, and the idea that we grow up and we have a family and everything is very normal and very much the way that we see the world right now. And that's potentially not what we get to have. And it's hard to know what we will get to have. And it's hard to know if that's going to feel okay when we get there. We're going to have to make sacrifices, but are enough people going to be willing to sacrifice so that we don't actually have to expect the worst that could potentially come in the future because of climate change?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Raina, please.
All right, just a quick note that anyone that stands up for any of the issues that they feel passionate about is giving up, exposing a little flaw that humanity and their indigenous or their ethnicity has. So whenever I'm standing up from climate change, against climate change, I'm exposing a flaw in humanity that I don't want to admit. And if everyone can see that flaw and everyone can admit to having that flaw and everyone can try to improve to not have that flaw for future generations, I think the world will become in unity and become a movement that is powerful.
Agreed. Yeah. And it's not selfish. The whole world is run on, we have to start with us. Why do they say when you're, put your oxygen mask on first? Because you can't help anybody if you're not helping yourself first. And as hard as that sounds, I think that's what happens with really big hearts like ours. We care so much that it's hard not to feel like we're being selfish, because there's so much, I think there's just so much love in our hearts personally. Peter, what do you say to that?
Yeah, Raina hits it right on. What's happening to humanity, in my experience, is the mirror is turned on us, and we're having to really look at ourselves. And that's not something that we do very well. You pointed that out so well. We are totally averse to dealing with our issues, and we're grief phobic, we're death phobic, we're just so scared. of being judged, because we've been such a judgmental species and such a separating species, that this is the core untangling. As we keep untangling this thing, so it gets deeper like this. And so you're so right on, Raina, that what needs to emerge in humanity, what needs to evolve before our very eyes, is our willingness to say, oh my God, the way we've done it does not work. And we have to sacrifice the privilege that I've had. I have to sacrifice the privilege I have to deal with this. I mean, I want more than anything to drive 5 hours and go watch my nephew play hockey. It's just a beautiful little 11-year-old guy, and I love watching him play hockey, and he's 5 hours away. And I have to give that up. I have to limit my trips to see my nieces and nephews. I have to not just fly to North Carolina because some of my other family's there. I have to dare to look at my diet. I have to dare to look in the eyes of you guys, you know, and to say, holy wow, right? I'm so sorry that the generation here ahead of you, just, we didn't know what we were doing. And some people woke up a little bit, but it wasn't enough to take on the wave of this go, more, faster. And we find ourselves, I find myself right here looking in the eyes of 5 young ladies who I have to say, I'm so sorry. Your world is going to be very different. And what we need to do is dare to feel that, because in grief work, what happens is when you dare to feel the grief, then that's where the energy comes out to deal with the grief. But when we don't feel the grief, we think that it's not in there. We think we don't have the capacity to feel the grief, so let's not feel it. But the trick is that when you do feel it, it opens up your heart in a way that allows the coming out of how to deal with that grief. And that's the core inner shift that's happening for humanity right now, is because we're not able to avoid the grief now. It's here. And Raina, you hit it right on the head. It's time for us to look at ourselves. Well, all of you have hit it on the head, but just most recently.
Oh my gosh, what a brilliant bunch. Now, Victoria, we would love to hear from you too if you want to add anything. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be a bad host just please feel free to pipe in if you'd like to.
No, right now I'm producing my first summit ever, and it's focused around how the inner work that we do is the only way to act. Well, I didn't say the only way, but it's the way to create an effect in the world around us. And that's exactly what you guys are coming to on your own. I mean, I know you don't want to focus on age, and yet at your age to have this kind of awareness and this type of wisdom, it's just profoundly inspiring. And it's proof that, you know, a new generation is here, and you're here to clean up the mess. I mean, take that banner and just run with it. You know, things happen when we need to correct course. We don't always correct course, even if we know we need to, even if we know it's the right thing. We correct course when we have to. And right now we have to. There is no not doing at this point. So anything that you guys are doing, keep doing. And it's that inner work, it's that inner shift that will lead to the outer effects.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Yeah, thank you. I'm really glad that you shared that. What is it? Where's your summit? Is it an online summit we should know about, or?
Yes, it's createyes.net/createyes.
Okay.
That's where you can find it. And, you know, I'm new, and even at, 54 years old, I think that's what it is now. This is my first time doing something like that. And for all of you, you're doing your first time. And wherever it doesn't matter where we are on the circle, we begin, you take action. It doesn't matter if it's perfect or, imperfect. You begin, and every action that we are all taking collectively, it all adds up, and it builds that cohesion, and it builds that vibration for out and out it goes.
I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart and bottom of my soul for just being who you are. It's just such a joy to share in this with you, and an honor. And I just want to creativelyunited.org wants to do everything we can to elevate and lift everybody doing this type of work. So whatever we can do to be of support, just let us know.